She cared and fed a poor old woman, unaware she is her lost mother. In Lagos, people speak with their feet before their mouths. Before dawn, the city had already stretched like a lion and began to prowl. Buses coughed to life, hawkers tied change in the corners of their wrappers, and the lagoon breathed a damp smell of fish and diesel. On the bridge, a white jeep rolled through the haze like a quiet promise that money could buy order in a place that loved disorder. Chiamaka Udeh sat behind the wheel. To Lagos tabloids, she was the Iron Lady of real estate, the youngest billionaire in the state, 32, sharp-eyed, and as private as a locked shrine. To boardroom enemies, she was a closed door and a calm voice. To the women she paid for hospital bills and school fees, she was a quiet miracle, the kind that carried its own weather. But deep inside her, in a room with no windows, a little girl still waited for a woman who had said, "I will come back before the sun sleeps," and never did. It was 2 weeks to Harmattan, the season when even truths become brittle. Chiamaka had woken with a dream she hated and loved, someone humming in a language her mind knew but her mouth had forgotten. The melody had followed her into her shower, into her wardrobe, into the jeep, and onto the bridge, where the city's breath joined it in a sad chorus. Her driver had taken ill, fever and shivering, so she was driving herself, a thing she did once in a long while when she needed to feel the road argue under her hands. She passed the hawkers, the yellow buses sagging like tired jokes, the billboard of a politician smiling with a mouthful of sugar, and then the traffic did what Lagos traffic does. It stopped to gossip. It was near Ibut Meta that she saw the old woman. At first, the figure was just cloth and bone and a stubborn shadow leaning against a concrete pillar sprayed with posters of prayer night, break your yokes. Then the figure straightened, slowly, like a story you thought you knew returning in a new dress. The old woman's wrapper was faded blue, her blouse was torn at the shoulder and held together with a safety pin that had seen more moons than some marriages. A raffia bag sat by her feet, its mouth yawning with nothing inside. She didn't wave or chase cars, she simply stood, looking at the road as if the asphalt owed her an apology. Traffic moved, stopped, shivered forward, stopped. When the white jeep reached the old woman, Chiamaka's hand stopped too. The old woman's eyes were clear. Not many things in Lagos are clear, air, truth, water, so when you meet a pair of eyes that are, you notice. They were the kind of eyes that had known rain that fell for 3 days without rest, hunger that stretches your shadow, and relief that tastes like cool water after market dust. They were not begging eyes. They were the eyes of someone who had argued with life and still brought cola nut to the table. Chiamaka lowered her window. "Mama," she said, because every old woman on the street was mama unless you wanted trouble. "Are you okay?" The old woman's mouth twitched into a smile that was all bones and kindness. "Daughter," she said in a voice like palm wine poured gently. "The road is long, but the legs are longer. I am looking for the right car to ask for a favor. The oracle sent the song, and I followed the song. People say plenty things in Lagos. They say okadas fly faster when a policeman looks away. They say if you eat jollof with a spoon that has no shadow, you will forget your father's name. But this one was new." Chiamaka blinked. "What favor, Mama?" The old woman nodded toward the hawkers clustered by the next bus. "Food first. Words sit better on a full stomach. If you help me today, I will not forget you when I meet my knight." Traffic behind her began to groan. A taxi driver leaned out and barked, "Auntie, we no day sleep here." Chiamaka ignored him. There are times a person's life stands at a junction and nothing but your own stubbornness can turn the steering. "Get in," Chiamaka said, surprising herself. "I know a place up the road." The old woman moved like a question that had lived too long without an answer, carefully, slowly, with dignity. She opened the passenger door and sat, gathering her wrapper, tucking in her feet as if she didn't want to dirty the car with her story. A smell floated with her, smoke from a real fire, wood smoke that had cooked soup on nights when the moon leaned close to watch. Under the smoke was something else, the soft powdery scent of udala fruit, the kind you suck until even the seeds are tired. The melody in Chiamaka's head grew louder. She put the jeep in gear. They didn't talk as she drove, and Lagos wrapped around them in its noisy shawl. When they reached a small buka tucked behind a petrol station, one of those places that looked like hunger had built them faster than a surveyor could complain, Chiamaka parked. The buka belonged to a woman called Mama Funto, who cooked soup that sent tongues to confession. People came in suits from nearby offices and construction workers came with dust on their faces. Good food knows no tribe, it only knows those who respect it. "Wait," Chiamaka said, But the old woman was already out, moving toward the buka with that careful dignity. Chiamaka followed, the melody tying itself around her wrist like a quiet child. Inside, heat and laughter fought for space. Pots the size of quiet curses simmered behind a counter, egusi dotted with vegetables, ofo nugbu so bitter it cleaned your thoughts, ogbono slick as slippery proverbs. The air was thick with pepper and story. Maka. Mama Funto called. You came yourself. We're your people. On sick leave, Chiamaka said. 2 plates, jollof and beans, goat meat, plantain. And please add okra for mama. Warm water, not too hot. What is my own name? The old woman asked softly. I don't know, Chiamaka admitted, and the truth sounded like something falling gently and landing without breaking. Call me Nnenna, the old woman said. It means mother is father too. Sometimes fate eats the father's shadow and leaves only the mother to stand in both footprints. They ate with their hands. Nnenna took slow, grateful mouthfuls, closing her eyes as if swallowing history. The way she used her thumb to chase stubborn grains, the way she broke meat with that small strength of old age, the way she chewed with patience, those things pressed on something hidden in Chiamaka, a shelf in her mind where a small tin cup still waited beside a wooden spoon. When they finished, Nnenna wiped her fingers on a piece of old newspaper and leaned back, her sigh deep and satisfied. If a person feeds you, you must leave them with a blessing, or else your tongue will forget the path to gratitude, she said, her fingers weaving in the air as if catching invisible threads. May the ground not drink your tears. May your morning not forget to wake. Amen, Chiamaka replied automatically. She wanted to ask 100 questions, about where Nnenna came from, about what song had brought her, about why her voice knotted around certain words the way clay knots around a potter's hand. But questions are like palm oil. Once you pour too much, the soup refuses balance. Where do you sleep, Mama? She asked instead. Under the bridge sometimes, Nnenna said, looking neither ashamed nor proud. Sometimes in a church that forgets to lock the door quickly. But I am not a beggar, not the way people think. I am a passerby on a road the oracle drew with ash. The ash will rain, and the road will show. I am looking for a house that once held a child charm bracelet, tiny white beads and a red string, split by a brass cowrie. I am looking for a lullaby that smells like udala and soap. The buka had grown noisy. Laughter, money, hot plates clinking. But inside Chiamaka, everything became sudden quiet. A child charm bracelet, a flash of brass, a red line on small brown skin. A lullaby, a tune without words, or words without vowels, or a prayer disguised as a song. She swallowed. Mama, what is the lullaby like? Nnenna smiled with her eyes. Songs change their dresses depending on who they are visiting. But this one always begins like a rain that forgot to hurry. She hummed, low, soft, and old. The melody touched the room and gathered itself into a small warm shape, like a sleeping chick pressed into a child's palm. Something opened in Chiamaka's chest. Memory is a shy animal. If you chase it, it runs. If you sit quietly, it will wander out and graze beside you. Now a picture wandered out, a veranda with cracked red earth, a young woman with a wide, tired smile, a bowl of Gary soaking on a stool, her own small hands reaching for beads that winked in the light. The humming. The smell. The way the young woman had snapped her fingers to call laughter from the air. Chiamaka realized her hands had come together without permission, fingers laced, as if in prayer. She unclasped them. I knew a song like that, she said, but the words came out in a whisper. Nnenna's head tilted. Did you? Then the road has hands. It is already pushing. Mama Funto arrived with toothpicks and cold zobo in sweating plastic cups. Ihen my billionaire, she teased, winking. You and Mama here are doing family meeting? See the way both of you are keeping your voices like secret police. She laughed and moved on, her ankle bells soft beneath the crew of her voice. Chiamaka looked at Nnenna. The old woman's face held lines the way a palm frond holds rain after a storm, full, shining, humble. Her hair was gray, not white, stubborn in the way gray hair is when it refuses to agree with time's full verdict. A thin scar ran from the corner of her left eye to the beginning of her cheek, the kind of scar a child might give you by accident when they're learning that love means reaching without measuring. Come with me, Chiamaka heard herself say. Not under the bridge today. I have a guest room. You can rest there a few nights. We will talk properly. There are clothes also. And soap. She laughed, embarrassed by the softness in her mouth. Soap is a good friend, Nnenna said. It tells even sorrow to sit outside for a while. She touched Chiamaka's wrist, and her fingers were cool and dry. But I will not be your burden. A goat that eats another man's yam must learn to bleat small. You won't be a burden, Chiamaka said, more fiercely than she intended. Something in her had already made the decision before her tongue arrived. They left the buka together, stepped into the white slap of Lagos afternoon, and climbed into the jeep. As they pulled out, a small boy ran across the path, his toy car wobbling, his laughter bright. For no reason she could name, it made Chiamaka's eyes sting. She turned her face to the road. On the drive to her Ikoyi home, the city continued its rough music, sirens, horns, curses braided into everyday air. Nnenna watched the passing world as if reading old handwriting, nodding sometimes, smiling at nothing, humming sometimes under her breath. At a red light near Falomo, she turned and said, "Your house, does it have a cashew tree in the compound?" "No," Chiamaka said, startled. "A flamboyant tree. It drops red flowers and my gardener quarrels with it." She almost added, "I used to dream of a cashew tree. I used to reach up for its fruit and laugh when the yellow juice ran to my elbow," but her mouth closed on the words like a door against a wet wind. "Ah," Nnenna said, as if listening to a drum only she could hear. "Flamboyant keeps secrets in red cloth." They reached the house. High white walls, a gate that slid like quiet wealth, flowers disciplined into beauty, stone that had learned the patience of staying expensive. The security man saluted, confused at the sight of Madame driving and a strange old woman in the passenger seat, but Lagos had trained him to mind his business. Inside, the house smelled like lemon oil and ambition. Chiamaka led Nnenna to a guest room with a small balcony. It faced the flamboyant tree, whose red flowers lay on the grass like a festival that had slept in. The room wore soft colors, cream, gentle brown, the blue of old cloth that had been loved. She felt a strange shyness, as if she were introducing two people she cared about who might not like each other at first. "There are towels in the bathroom," she said, hands hovering like uncertain birds. "A new toothbrush. Soap. If you need anything, press this bell." She touched the button on the bedside console. "Rest. We can talk in the evening. I'll have clothes sent up." Nnenna walked to the window, pulled the curtain, and let light fall on her face. She touched the glass. "The sun is a generous gossip," she murmured. "It tells your wall what it saw in the market." She turned. "Thank you, daughter. The ground under your step will learn good manners." Chiamaka left, closing the door softly, and leaned against the hallway wall. Her heart felt like a calabash that had been quietly filled during a long story. It weighed something new. She pressed her palms to her eyes and saw the lullaby again, the $1 again, a small hand chasing brass beads. She told herself she was being sentimental. She told herself she was practicing kindness as she always did. She told herself many reasonable things, and none of them wiped away the feeling that the house had just swallowed a piece that had been missing from its puzzle for years. Downstairs, her phone vibrated, a board meeting reminder, a minister's aide confirming a site visit, a journalist asking for a comment on a rumor. The world that respected money demanded her attention. She sent a few calm replies, scheduled some calls, and instructed her steward to take pepper soup up in an hour, with soft yam and a little ginger. Evening found the house quieter than usual. The flamboyant shed petals, and a breeze came with news of the lagoon, salt, old stories, soft arguments between fishermen and dusk. Chiamaka carried a small parcel of new clothes, wrappers, blouses, a headscarf, up the stairs. She reached the guest room and paused. Through the door she could hear singing. The same lullaby, fuller now, unafraid. A woman's voice, a little cracked around the edges, steady at the center. She knocked. "Mama." "Enter," Nnenna said. The room smelled like soap and pepper soup. The old woman had washed and tied her wrapper fresh. Her gray hair lay back from her face like mist after rainfall. She was sitting on the bed, and in her lap lay something wrapped in cloth, the size of a small orange. "What is that?" Chiamaka asked, curious. "A thing that keeps a person's shadow from straying," Nnenna said with a smile that hid more than it told. She unwrapped the cloth and showed a small calabash, polished by long handling. Around its neck ran a red string, and on the string, anchored in the middle, sat a brass cowrie. The exact weight of it pulled on the bottom of Chiamaka's memory like a tide claims sand. Her breath caught. "Where did you get that?" "This one," Nnenna asked, watching her face. "It has followed me longer than hunger, longer than road. It knows the way a child's wrist learned to sleep within its circle. I kept it the day the market crier shouted fire and the world broke into running. I kept it the night the river swallowed my voice and left me with only humming. I have been looking for where to return it." The room leaned. Far away, the city continued to be itself, noise, light, argument, but inside this small square of space, something old had stood up and opened its mouth to speak. Chiamaka's hands trembled. She had not told anyone about the bracelet because there are some memories you hide in the place behind your ribs where names cannot go. Yet here it was, red string brass cowrie, staring back like a witness who had finally reached court. Nnenna touched the cowrie with 2 fingers and began to hum again, and the hum was not a stranger anymore. It walked up to Chiamaka like a child returning home barefoot, full of dust and joy. When the song ended, silence stood in the room like a respected elder. Nnenna lifted her eyes, and their clearness was now a river under moonlight. "Daughter," she said softly, not as a title but as a fact. "There are stories that sit quietly until the day their stools are called. This stool has been called." Chiamaka opened her mouth, but the words were not ready. She closed it, and the only sound was her heartbeat, steady then faster, then steady again. Outside, a single red petal let go of the flamboyant and fell against the window glass, sliding down like a tear that understood what it was doing. And in that moment, before any confession could cross the room, before any name could step out and bow, the generator coughed, the lights blinked, and the house took a deep breath. The story had arrived. It was not yet ready to speak. The following morning was quieter than usual, or perhaps it felt quieter because Chiamaka was trying to make sense of everything that had happened. She stood by the window, watching the clouds shift lazily across the sky. It had rained heavily in the night, and the streets outside were still slick with the aftermath, reflections of car headlights shimmering like brief moments of clarity in a foggy dream. The old woman, Nnenna, was still asleep when Chiamaka slipped out of bed. Her presence in the guest room felt strange, like a quiet storm that had arrived without warning. The hum from the night before echoed in Chiamaka's mind, lingering in the corners of her thoughts. Nnenna had been singing again when Chiamaka had returned from her evening errands. A soft, steady hum, the kind of song that made no promises but seemed to carry the weight of forgotten truths. There was something about it that made Chiamaka uncomfortable, but she couldn't quite explain why. It was as if the tune was meant for someone else, someone who knew things Chiamaka was not ready to hear. She shook off the thought, grabbing her phone to check for any urgent messages. Her schedule was tight as always. Meetings, more projects, deadlines. She needed to focus, to keep her mind on the things that mattered. Yet, whenever she tried, her mind kept drifting back to Nnenna and the mysterious way the old woman had entered her life. How did she know about the bracelet? The calabash? Was it all just coincidence? Or something else? At breakfast, Chiamaka was still lost in thought. She had arranged for a small breakfast for Nnenna, pap and akara, the fried bean cakes that were as much a part of Lagos as the bustling streets outside. When she entered the guest room, Nnenna was sitting by the window, the light from the rising sun soft against her skin. She had already dressed herself in a clean wrapper and blouse, as though she had done nothing more than wake up from a long nap. "Good morning, Mama," Chiamaka said, setting the breakfast tray on the bed. "Good morning, daughter," Nnenna replied with a gentle smile, her voice thick with the same warm hum from the night before. "I had a good sleep. The road does that sometimes. When it is ready to speak, it lets you rest." Chiamaka wasn't sure how to respond to that, so she simply smiled back. "I brought you breakfast. I hope it's okay." "Of course, child," Nnenna said, her eyes glinting with something Chiamaka couldn't quite place. She took the bowl of pap, tasting it slowly, savoring the sweetness of the meal as though it were something far more precious than just breakfast. Ah, the food is as sweet as the voice of a child who has just found her mother. Chiamaka blinked. You still have not told me where you are from. How did you know about the bracelet?" Nnenna's eyes met hers, deep and knowing, as if she had been waiting for this moment to come. "The song told me, daughter," she replied, her voice low but steady. "It called me to you." "The song?" Chiamaka repeated, her brow furrowing. "What song?" Nnenna did not answer right away. Instead, She took another bite of the akara and chewed slowly. The song of loss, the song of finding. The one that calls things home after they have been lost for too long. Chiamaka felt a chill run through her, as though a cloud had just passed over her heart. What do you mean? That bracelet, it belonged to someone. She stopped herself, unsure of how to finish the sentence. You were a child when the song first came to you, Nnenna continued, her eyes dark with the weight of the words she was about to speak. But you did not listen. You did not hear it because you were too small. But the song never forgets its way, and it always returns. Chiamaka's heart skipped. My mother? She asked, her voice trembling. Nnenna nodded slowly. Yes. Your mother, and the lost pieces of your past. She is the song. She is the one you have been waiting for. The words hung in the air like smoke, and for a moment, Chiamaka could not breathe. Her chest tightened, her head spinning with questions, memories, fragments of things she had never been able to put together. I don't understand, Chiamaka said, her voice breaking. I don't even remember her. She left when I was just a baby. She did not leave of her own will, Nnenna replied, her voice firm yet kind. Something happened. Something took her away, but she left behind a trail, a song that would one day bring her back. Chiamaka stood frozen, her mind reeling. This could not be true. How could it be? Her mother had abandoned her, her father had raised her alone, pouring every ounce of his love into her, every drop of sweat into building a life for them. She could not bear the thought of her mother being anything other than what she had always believed. How do you know this? Chiamaka whispered, her voice thick with disbelief. Nnenna set the bowl of pap aside and looked at Chiamaka with a gaze that seemed to pierce through her, as though she could see into the very depths of her soul. The song told me. It sings to those who have ears to hear. The same song that carried you when you were small, the same song that brought you to me, the same song that will lead you to her. Chiamaka shook her head, tears threatening to spill. I can't believe this. I can't. Nnenna stood, her age evident in the slow, deliberate movement of her body. She walked to Chiamaka, her hand reaching out to gently touch the young woman's shoulder. It is not for you to believe, daughter. It is for you to hear. The room seemed to close in around Chiamaka, the walls pressing against her as the weight of the old woman's words settled like a stone in her chest. And if I hear it? She asked, her voice small. Then you will find what was lost, Nnenna said softly. You will find her, and you will know the truth of the song. Chiamaka felt a tear slip down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. She couldn't. The truth, if it was true, felt too big, too heavy to hold. But it was there, pressing against her heart, a truth she could not deny. And so, as the day stretched on, and the city of Lagos continued its ceaseless hum outside, Chiamaka Udeh took the first step into a journey she had never expected, toward a truth she had never imagined. Later that afternoon, Chiamaka received an unexpected message. It was from an old family friend, someone who had known her mother before she disappeared. The message was simple, and yet, it struck her to her core. I think it's time you knew the truth about your mother. It's time for you to hear the full story. Her heart raced, and her hands trembled as she read the message again. The truth, it was no longer just a word, it was something real, something tangible, something that was reaching out to her, pulling her closer to a past she had long buried. The story was about to unfold. And it would begin with a song. The evening was heavy with a stillness that seemed to hold its breath, as if the world itself were waiting for something to unfold. Chiamaka sat in her study, the soft hum of the air conditioning the only sound in the vast, quiet room. Her eyes scanned the message again, her fingers lightly tracing the words on the screen of her phone. It was clear, but cryptic. It's time for you to hear the full story. Your mother never truly left. She's been close, waiting for you to find the truth. The message had come from a family friend, Mr. Kalu, an old man who had been a close confidant of her mother's when she was younger. He had been the one to take her in as a child whenever her father had been away, but Chiamaka had never understood the depth of their connection. She had heard his name mentioned in passing, but never anything beyond that. And now here he was, calling her to uncover something that had been hidden in the shadows of her past. Chiamaka had always believed that her mother had abandoned her. It was the story her father had told her, the story she had grown up with. Her mother had left when Chiamaka was just a baby, and her father had raised her alone. He had spoken little of her, never with bitterness, but always with a quiet sadness that Chiamaka had never fully understood. She had always told herself that her mother had made a choice, that she had left them behind without a second thought. But now, something was telling her that the story was incomplete. The truth, if it existed, was out of reach, but it was within her grasp. She stood up from her desk, her heart racing. She had to meet Mr. Kalu. She had to know more. Chiamaka texted him back. "Where do I meet you?" The response came quickly. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Come to the old house in Ikoyi. I'll explain everything." The message was direct, without any fluff. There was no time to waste. The next morning, Chiamaka drove herself to the address Mr. Kalu had provided. The streets of Ikoyi were quieter than usual, the usual buzz of traffic replaced by the occasional honking of a car and the murmur of voices in the distance. She found the house easily. It was an old colonial building, tucked between two modern apartment complexes. The once white walls were now faded, the garden overgrown with wild plants, but there was something familiar about it. Something that tugged at her chest as soon as she saw it. She parked the car in front of the gate and stepped out, her heels clicking on the gravel driveway. The house loomed in front of her, its once grand columns now covered in ivy, its windows reflecting the soft morning light in a way that seemed to cast a shadow over the entire place. Chiamaka hesitated for a moment, taking in the scene before her. This place had once been a home, a place where her mother had lived, a place that held the answers she had been searching for. As she approached the front door, it creaked open, and there stood Mr. Kalu. His once dark hair had turned gray, and his face was lined with age, but his eyes were sharp bright, as though they had seen more than a lifetime's worth of stories. He smiled when he saw her. "Chiamaka," he said softly. "It's been too long." "Mr. Kalu," she replied, her voice filled with uncertainty. "You said you had something to tell me about my mother." He nodded, stepping aside to let her in. "Come inside. We have much to discuss." Chiamaka entered the house, the air inside thick with the smell of old wood and dust. The furniture was antique, the kind of furniture you would expect to find in a house that had been left behind by time. It was clear that no one had lived here in years, but there was still a sense of familiarity to it. The walls were lined with photographs, some in black and white, others in color. Many of them featured her mother, a young, vibrant woman with a wide smile that lit up her face. Mr. Kalu led her into a sitting room, where he gestured for her to sit. He settled into the chair opposite her, folding his hands in front of him as if preparing to recount an ancient tale. "I don't know where to begin," he said, his voice low and filled with regret. "Your mother, Chiamaka, she wasn't who you think she was." Chiamaka's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "Your mother didn't leave because she wanted to," Mr. Kalu continued. "She didn't leave because she didn't care for you. She left because she had no choice." Chiamaka leaned forward, her breath catching in her throat. "What do you mean? She had no choice?" Mr. Kalu looked at her for a long moment before speaking again. "Your mother was involved in something far bigger than all of us. She was part of something that was beyond her control, something that forced her to disappear. I knew her better than anyone. I knew what she sacrificed, what she lost, and what she had to endure. But there was one thing she never gave up, her love for you." Chiamaka felt a tear slip down her cheek. She had never known the full story, but she had always suspected there was more to the story than she had been told. Where is she now? Why didn't she ever come back? Mr. Kalu took a deep breath, his gaze turning somber. She was caught in a web of power, a web that entangled not just her, but her entire family. The people she was involved with, powerful people, made it impossible for her to return. They made sure she would never see you again. Chiamaka's mind raced, trying to make sense of the words. Her mother had been involved in something dark, something dangerous. But why? And how had it all started? "You're telling me my mother was forced to leave?" she asked, her voice trembling. "But why would they do that? What could she have done to make them hate her so much?" Mr. Kalu sighed deeply, his eyes shadowed with years of untold stories. "It wasn't hatred, Chiamaka. It was power. She was part of something much larger than her. The people she was involved with, they control things. The kind of things that affect nations. They control the game from the shadows, and your mother got too close to something she shouldn't have." Chiamaka's head was spinning. She had always known there was more to her mother's disappearance than a simple abandonment. But this was far beyond anything she could have imagined. Mr. Kalu stood up and moved to the bookshelf, pulling out an old leather-bound book. He opened it to a page that had been marked with a yellowing piece of paper. "This," he said, handing it to her, "is the key. It's the only thing your mother left behind. It's her legacy, her final message to you." Chiamaka took the book, her fingers trembling as she flipped it open. The pages were filled with handwritten notes, strange symbols, and phrases she didn't recognize. At the very center of the page was a drawing of a red string wrapped around a brass cowrie. "It's the same one," Chiamaka whispered, her heart pounding in her chest. "Yes," Mr. Kalu said softly. "The bracelet. Your mother left it with me when she had to disappear. She knew that one day, when the time was right, you would find it. And you would find your way back to her." Chiamaka closed the book, her mind racing. The story was beginning to take shape, but it was far from complete. There were too many questions, too many unanswered pieces. Mr. Kalu seemed to sense her confusion. "The road is long, Chiamaka. But the song is playing, and you are hearing it now. Your mother never wanted to leave you. But she had no choice. The only way for you to find her is to follow the path she left behind, to listen to the song, and to trust the journey." The days that followed felt like an intricate puzzle, its pieces too large to hold, yet too sharp to ignore. Chiamaka could not bring herself to look away from the book Mr. Kalu had given her. Its pages were a map, but one with no clear instructions, filled with cryptic symbols and markings. Her mind buzzed with possibilities, each thought leading to a new question, a new turn in the labyrinth of her mother's disappearance. She had spent hours at her desk, the book laid out before her, her fingers tracing the unfamiliar characters, trying to decode the language her mother had left behind. But each time she thought she had unlocked a clue, the meaning slipped away like smoke in the wind. The symbols were not just random scribbles. They were a language, an ancient one, a language of power that had been hidden in plain sight. But Chiamaka wasn't sure how to read it. Every time she thought she saw a pattern, it eluded her. The red string and brass cowrie, the symbol that had haunted her from the moment she had seen it, kept reappearing, like a thread that tied everything together. But what did it mean? Nnenna, ever watchful and quiet, had not said much about the book. She had only observed, humming softly at times, as though the very act of sitting near it unlocked something in her. Her humming was like a constant reminder, a call that echoed in the corners of Chiamaka's mind. The old woman seemed to understand more than she let on, but she would not speak until Chiamaka was ready to hear. "I know what you're thinking," Nnenna said one afternoon, her voice soft but carrying a weight of something ancient. Chiamaka was at the kitchen table, her coffee cup long forgotten, staring at the symbols in the book. She had been staring for so long that her eyes had started to ache. Nnenna was standing in the doorway, watching her with a knowing look. She had a quiet, powerful way of being, and somehow in her presence, the world seemed to bend just a little toward the past. "I don't know how to read it, Mama," Chiamaka confessed, frustration bleeding into her voice. "I don't know what this means. There are too many things that don't make sense, too many pieces I can't fit together." Nnenna smiled gently and walked into the room, sitting across from her at the table. "You are trying to solve a puzzle that doesn't have an answer yet. The road you walk is not straight, Chiamaka. It never has been. It bends and turns, and sometimes it goes backward before it goes forward. The answers you seek are already inside of you. They always have been." Chiamaka looked at her, confusion etching her brow. "What do you mean? How can the answers be inside of me? I don't remember anything. I don't even know where to start." "You start by listening," Nnenna said softly. "You listen to the song. It has been with you since the day you were born, but you have not heard it. Not yet. The song carries your mother's voice. And when you learn to hear it, you will find the way." Chiamaka felt a chill sweep over her. "The song. You keep saying the song. What does it mean?" "The song," Nnenna repeated, "is the path your mother walked before she disappeared. It is the one thing that ties everything together. The bracelet, the cowrie, the symbols. They are all pieces of a larger story, one that has been told through generations. Your mother was part of something ancient, Chiamaka. Something powerful." Chiamaka looked down at the book again, the symbols staring back at her. "You keep saying something powerful. What was she part of? What are you telling me?" Nnenna sighed, as though the weight of the world rested on her shoulders. Your mother was not just any woman. She was born into a lineage of women who were chosen to guard something sacred, a secret that could change the course of everything. They were known as the Keepers, and they were entrusted with knowledge that no one was ever supposed to possess. But like all secrets, this one was eventually hunted. It was feared. Chiamaka's heart raced. Hunted? Feared? What do you mean? Nnenna looked out the window, as if the words she was about to speak had been hidden in the landscape for far too long. The Keepers were charged with guarding the Oracle's path, a path that led to the heart of a hidden truth, a truth that could alter the balance of the world. Your mother was one of the last to carry the Oracle's legacy. When she was younger, she ran from it. But it found her, as it always does. Chiamaka felt the room shift. Are you saying, my mother was involved with something like that? Something secret? Something dangerous? Yes, Nnenna answered. And that is why she had to leave. She didn't have a choice. The Oracle's path is not a path one chooses lightly. It is a burden, a responsibility passed down through generations of women who are chosen not by fate, but by something much older. Your mother tried to resist it, to escape it, but the forces at play were too great. They tracked her. And when they found her, they forced her to make a choice. To protect you, she disappeared. She gave up everything, even her name, to keep you safe. Chiamaka was silent for a long time, her thoughts swirling. So what does this have to do with me? Why now? Why is this all coming to the surface after so many years? Because you are ready, Nnenna said, her voice steady. You are the key to unlocking the Oracle's path. The moment you were born, the song began. And now it is calling you. But why me? Chiamaka whispered, her voice shaking with a mix of fear and disbelief. Why would I be chosen for something like this? I don't know anything about this oracle. I'm just a businesswoman. What could I possibly have to do with any of this? Nnenna's eyes softened, and she reached out, taking Chiamaka's hand in hers. Because you are her daughter, Chiamaka. And the truth has always been inside of you. The Oracle's path chooses those who are destined to carry it forward. You have lived a life of silence, but that silence is breaking now. The song is calling you to remember. It is time for you to hear it. Chiamaka felt the weight of her mother's absence pressing on her chest, but something else was stirring too, a strange pull, a deep, unexplainable sense that Nnenna was right. She had always known there was something more to her story, something she had not yet uncovered. And now, the truth was beginning to reveal itself, piece by piece. As Nnenna stood up, she added, the path ahead will not be easy, but you are not alone. You never have been. The spirits of the Keepers will guide you, just as they guided your mother. Chiamaka swallowed hard. Where do I start? What do I do? You start by following the song, Nnenna said. Listen closely. The Oracle's path will speak to you in ways you cannot yet understand. But trust it. Trust the journey. And when the time comes, you will know what to do. Later that night, as the city of Lagos hummed below her apartment, Chiamaka stood by the window, her hands pressed against the cool glass. The sky was dark, but the stars were visible, silent witnesses to a story that had been unfolding for generations. She closed her eyes and tried to listen. The song. At first, there was nothing, just the sounds of the city, the distant rumble of cars, the soft call of a hawker in the streets below. But then, just as Nnenna had promised, something shifted. It was faint at first, like a whisper caught in the wind. But it grew louder, clearer, until it was as if 1,000 voices were calling her name. Her heart raced, her pulse quickened. She could hear it now, the song, faint but unmistakable. It was her mother's voice, rising from the depths of her soul, a voice she had never truly known, but had always carried with her. The melody was old, familiar, and it filled the room with a sense of purpose. Chiamaka opened her eyes. The room around her had transformed. The lights had dimmed, and for a brief moment, she could have sworn the walls were breathing, shifting, as if the house itself was alive. The song was calling her, guiding her, pulling her toward something she could not yet comprehend. The Oracle's path had begun. The song continued to hum in Chiamaka's ears long after she had stepped away from the window. It wasn't a melody she recognized, not exactly, but it felt like a forgotten memory pushing its way through the fog of her mind. The sounds twisted through her thoughts, a mixture of grief, hope, and longing. A part of her wanted to dismiss it, To tell herself it was nothing more than the pull of exhaustion, the weight of too many questions. But another part, the part that had always been curious, always seeking answers, whether from the boardroom or from life itself, knew better. She couldn't ignore it. The world outside her apartment seemed distant, as if all the noise of Lagos, the honking cars, the street vendors shouting, the hum of life, had been muffled, replaced by the soft call of the song. Chiamaka moved through her apartment in a daze, trying to follow the rhythm that had taken hold of her. Her heart, still racing from the intensity of the moment, told her something had shifted, something that could never be undone. Nnenna's words echoed in her mind. The song is calling you to remember. Trust the journey. She needed answers. She had been given a piece of a puzzle, and now, all she could think of was finding the missing pieces. The oracle's path, the symbols, the bracelet, her mother's disappearance. They all seemed to be part of a greater whole, a story that Chiamaka had never been allowed to know. Now, it was time to piece it together. The next morning, Chiamaka set out for the location Nnenna had mentioned, an old forgotten temple hidden in the heart of Lagos. It had been a place her mother had visited often, according to the cryptic notes in the book Mr. Kalu had given her. The temple was said to be the heart of the oracle's path, the place where the keepers had once gathered to perform their rituals, the place where the song had been born. The drive through the city was long, the usual hustle and bustle filling the air as Chiamaka's mind drifted between the present and the past. She couldn't help but think of her mother. What had she been involved in? What had she been protecting? And why had she left so many questions unanswered? Chiamaka arrived at the temple as the sun was beginning its descent, casting long shadows across the building's cracked stone facade. It looked abandoned, its once grand architecture now worn and overgrown with vines. The gates were rusted, but they opened easily, as if welcoming her into its forgotten embrace. As she stepped inside, the air grew cooler, the scent of damp stone filling her lungs. The walls were covered in ancient markings, similar to those in the book. Symbols and runes, their meaning long lost to time, swirled around the room in an intricate dance. It felt like stepping into another world, a place where the past and the present collided in a haze of memory and mystery. "Welcome," a voice said, breaking through the silence. Chiamaka turned quickly, her heart skipping a beat. Standing in the doorway was Nnenna, her silhouette framed by the dimming light. She had followed Chiamaka here, though Chiamaka hadn't heard her arrive. "You knew I would come here," Chiamaka said, her voice tinged with awe. "I did not know," Nnenna replied softly. "But I knew you would need to find it. The temple holds more than just forgotten symbols, Chiamaka. It holds the truth. It holds the key to everything your mother kept hidden." Chiamaka nodded, her mind reeling. "What do I do now? Where do I begin?" Nnenna moved deeper into the temple, her footsteps echoing against the stone. "The song, daughter. You must listen to the song. It is the bridge between the world you know and the one that has been hidden from you. Your mother's legacy is written here. You must open your heart to it." Chiamaka felt her chest tighten. The song was more than just a melody. It was a key that unlocked something deep within her. She closed her eyes, her breath steady as she listened for it. The song was faint at first, but slowly it grew louder, resonating deep inside her. She could feel it, like an ancient pulse that had been waiting for her to hear it. The notes, the rhythm, it was familiar now, like a voice she had forgotten but knew she had always known. She turned to Nnenna, her voice barely a whisper. "I hear it." Nnenna smiled. "The path is open now. The song is calling you to see the truth." Chiamaka opened her eyes and looked around. The temple had transformed. The walls, once barren and cracked, now glowed with a faint light. The markings on the stone were no longer just symbols. They were stories, flowing like rivers across the walls. Each one seemed to pulse with energy, as though it were alive, telling a story that had been hidden for centuries. She stepped forward, her feet moving almost without thought. She was drawn to one of the markings, a symbol of a tree, its branches stretching out in all directions. It was a tree she recognized from her mother's old photographs, the tree that had stood in their family's backyard when she was just a child. Chiamaka traced the symbol with her fingers, and as she did, a strange warmth spread through her hand. The tree on the wall seemed to shift, its branches twisting and turning as if it were coming to life. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet trembled, and she stumbled back, her heart racing. The symbols on the walls began to glow brighter, and a deep resonant voice echoed through the temple. The song, her mother's song, was louder now, filling the room with its power. The air crackled with energy as the truth began to unfold before her. "This is it," Chiamaka whispered, her voice trembling with realization. "This is the oracle's path." The walls seemed to close in around her, the cymbals spinning faster, the song louder. Chiamaka felt a pull, as though the very air was pushing her toward something. She reached out, her fingers brushing against the glowing tree symbol. In an instant, the world around her exploded into light. When the light faded, Chiamaka found herself standing in a forest. The trees were ancient, their trunks thick and gnarled, their leaves shimmering in the soft light of the setting sun. It was a place she had never been, yet it felt strangely familiar. As she looked around, she saw a figure standing at the edge of the forest, her back to her. The woman was tall, her hair long and silver, her body draped in a flowing white robe. Her presence was regal, commanding, yet filled with a deep sadness. "Mother!" Chiamaka's voice trembled as she took a tentative step forward. The woman turned slowly, and Chiamaka's heart stopped. There, standing before her, was the face she had only ever seen in photographs, the face of the woman she had been searching for her entire life. Her mother. "I knew you would find me, Chiamaka," her mother said softly, her voice as familiar as the song. "I knew you would hear the call eventually." Chiamaka took another step forward, her breath catching in her throat. "Why? Why did you leave me? Why didn't you come back?" Her mother's eyes were filled with sorrow. "I didn't leave you, my child. I was taken. I was forced to leave, to protect you from a world that was too dangerous for you to understand. I wanted to return to you more than anything, but I couldn't." Chiamaka reached out, her fingers trembling as she touched her mother's arm. "What happened? What were you involved in?" Her mother sighed, the weight of years of untold stories pressing down on her. "I was part of something ancient, something that had been hidden for centuries. I was a keeper, entrusted with guarding the oracle's path. But those who sought to control it, those who sought the power of the oracle, did not care about the consequences. They did not care about me, or you. They forced me to make a choice, and that choice was to leave." Chiamaka felt the tears welling in her eyes. "But why? Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me the truth?" Her mother's face softened with love and regret. "I couldn't risk it, Chiamaka. The moment you learned the truth, you would be a target too. I had to protect you. But now, the time has come for you to take up the mantle. You are the last of the keepers, the one who will carry the oracle's legacy forward." Chiamaka's heart raced as she absorbed her mother's words. "I don't understand. I don't know how." "You will learn," her mother said, her voice filled with hope. "You've always known the song. Now you must learn to walk the path it leads you on." The forest around them began to shift, the trees bending and twisting as if they were alive, their roots digging into the earth. The song, the same song Chiamaka had heard all her life, grew louder, pulsing through the very air around her. It was calling her, guiding her. Her mother smiled, a look of peace settling on her face. "The journey is yours now, Chiamaka. The oracle's path is yours to follow. Go and remember." With those final words, her mother turned and disappeared into the forest, the light fading with her. Chiamaka stood alone, the song still echoing in her ears, the weight of her mother's legacy heavy on her shoulders. But now, for the first time, she understood. She understood her mother's sacrifice. And she understood the path she was about to walk. The oracle's path had claimed her. It was time to follow it. The air in the forest was thick with the weight of Chiamaka's realization. Her mother's disappearance, the ancient legacy she had inherited, it all felt too vast, too overwhelming for someone like her, a woman who had built her life on business deals, skyscrapers, and the cold precision of numbers. Yet now, she stood in the center of an ancient power, with a destiny stretching before her, pulling her deeper into a world she had never believed possible. The oracle's path had chosen her, just as it had chosen her mother before her, and every woman in their bloodline for generations. The knowledge, the power, the burden of the keepers, it all now rested in her hands. But Chiamaka did not feel the fire of triumph. She felt the quiet weight of responsibility pressing down on her, making her heart beat louder, making her head spin with questions that seemed too vast to answer. She was alone now, the vision of her mother fading with the trees, leaving her with nothing but the lingering echoes of the song, now louder than ever. She could feel the earth beneath her feet, the pulse of the ancient forces that had shaped this path, this destiny, and she realized she was standing on the precipice of something much larger than herself. She had to move forward. There was no choice now. The journey back to the city was long and silent. Chiamaka's mind was heavy, her heart restless. The city of Lagos, with its ceaseless hum and never-ending motion, seemed so far removed from the world she had just encountered. She was no longer just a businesswoman, no longer just a daughter seeking answers. She was a keeper of an ancient secret, the last in her bloodline, tasked with guarding the oracle's path. When she returned to her apartment, it was almost dusk. The streets outside were busy, filled with the usual noise of city life. But nothing seemed the same anymore. The hum of traffic, the calls of the hawkers, the blaring of car horns, all of it felt distant now, as though she were watching it from the outside. Nnenna was waiting for her when she entered the living room, her eyes watching Chiamaka with an understanding that went deeper than words. "You have found it," Nnenna said softly. "You have found the path." Chiamaka nodded, her voice too caught up in the whirlwind of emotion swirling inside her to speak. She sat down on the couch, her hands clasped tightly together, and finally she spoke. "My mother, she was protecting me all this time. She kept me safe from a world I never even knew existed." Her voice trembled as she said the words, her chest tight with the weight of them. "And now, I have to take up her mantle. I have to become the keeper." "Yes," Nnenna said, her voice gentle but firm. "The path you are on is not one of luxury or ease. It is one of sacrifice, and of power that will change the world. The oracle's path does not call its keepers lightly. It demands everything from them." "I don't know if I can do it, Mama," Chiamaka whispered. "I don't know if I'm ready." "You are," Nnenna said, her eyes softening. "You have always been ready, even when you didn't know it. The song called you home, and it will guide you. But remember, the oracle's path is not just about power. It is about balance. It is about understanding the weight of what you carry, and knowing when to act and when to step back." Chiamaka closed her eyes, her heart heavy with the knowledge that she was about to enter a world she had only ever heard about in stories, a world where the lines between right and wrong were blurred, where the choices she made would affect not only her life but the lives of countless others. "I'll do it," she said finally, her voice steady now. "I'll carry the burden. I'll protect the path, just like my mother did." Nnenna smiled softly, nodding in approval. "And you will not be alone. The keepers are never alone, even when they walk in silence. The spirits of those who came before you will guide you." The days that followed were a blur of research, discovery, and preparation. Chiamaka dove deeper into the ancient texts, the symbols, the rituals that had been passed down through generations. She sought out the few remaining keepers, people who had guarded the oracle's path in secret, people who had learned to live with the weight of knowledge too dangerous to be shared with the world. Some welcomed her with open arms, eager to share their wisdom. Others were wary, unsure if the time had truly come for the oracle's power to be wielded again. But as she continued her journey, Chiamaka began to see the world differently. She saw the threads of power running beneath the surface of everything, the corporations, the governments, the hidden forces that shaped the world. The oracle's path was not just about secrets, it was about power. And Chiamaka was learning how to control it. It was at the end of the week, as the city of Lagos pulsed with its usual rhythm, that Chiamaka received another message, one that would change the course of her path forever. The message was brief, but the words were clear. "They are coming for you, Chiamaka. The oracle's path cannot be allowed to continue. They will stop you before you complete your journey. Be ready." Her heart skipped a beat, but she didn't feel fear. She felt something else, determination, the kind of determination she had never felt before. The power of the oracle was not meant to be hidden away. It was meant to be wielded. It was meant to protect, to balance the world that had gone astray. "They think they can stop me," she murmured to herself, standing tall as she read the message again. But they can't. She was no longer just a businesswoman. She was the keeper of the oracle's path. And she would not allow anyone to take that from her. That night, as she prepared for what was to come, Chiamaka stood by the window of her apartment, watching the city below. The streets were bustling with activity, but for the first time, she saw the city in a new light. She saw the undercurrents of power that ran through the veins of Lagos, the dark deals, the secrets, the manipulation. And she realized that the oracle's path wasn't just a legacy. It was a call to action. A call to change the world. The song had brought her here. And now, It was time to make her own decision. As the days unfolded, Chiamaka embraced her role as the keeper. She uncovered the secrets her mother had hidden away, piecing together the puzzle of her family's legacy, of the oracle's power, and of the forces that sought to control it. The truth was not easy to bear, but Chiamaka carried it with grace, knowing that the path she walked was one of destiny. The enemies who had sought to stop her eventually came, as the message had predicted. But they underestimated her. They underestimated the strength of the keeper. And they underestimated the power of the oracle's path. Chiamaka faced each challenge with unwavering resolve, guided by the knowledge of those who had come before her. She stood at the crossroads of history, ready to lead the world into a new era, one where power would no longer be controlled by the few, but shared by those who sought to balance it with wisdom and compassion. Her mother's sacrifice had not been in vain. The legacy of the keepers would continue, and Chiamaka would be the one to carry it forward.